Saturday, June 4th, 2022. Between yesterday and today, there were a few pieces that actually thread together very well. I watched a program about mysteries of the abandoned. They're relative to something called a ghost town. It was season 4, episode 1. It brought to light that South Africa, at some point, was partially German, and then the other region or territory was British, which I never knew. Things they don't teach here in New York, in this New England. Then there's something about inside this episode, because it's several ghost towns, not just Africa, of continent and containment. It then goes to compulsory exchange population of Keokoi, which is between what my grandfather would used to refer to as Greco, which is Greek in this modern English, since he was not English native. He was not native English. And Turkey, Tuarki. Tuarki Nicolita. Then they show me this Saturday morning on the CBS. They show me walnuts. They paradox it as, or orthodox it as, Elizabeth and the Orchard, with replacing walnuts with tomatoes. Tomato. Then they say, let's call the whole thing off. I don't know, that was a thing in New York when I was growing up. They show somewhere in the localized section of the CBS this morning some x-ray technology taking like x-rays of Manhattan skyline, or that's what it looks like to the naked eye. Then they go to something with the space program, Ad Astra per Aspera, with the white, the GRIS meaning gray. Je ne sais pas, non so. That's what it reads. And then CHAFFEE. And they translate it in this English as rough road leads to the stars in Apollo 1. Now, if I read it in vain, they spell it VAIN and VEIN. I guess that's the difference between the lumen and the illuminated. And then what happened to me with the knocking over of these walnut trees. Again, when you open the walnuts, it looks like cerebellum. It looks like the brain matter, the white and gray brain matter. That would be the Apollo 1, white and gris, gray. So it says in Ungarisch, from Germano, tedesco, in Italiano, Ungarisch, Agy Esz. En français, it's cerveau. And in Germano, it's Gerian. In Alouette, gentil Alouette, it's à la tête, à la bec. For Agy Esz in Ungarish, since I just went to a local whatever, and he said I looked hungry. I sounded Hungary to him. He said he was Italian or Italian, and then he said he was surrounded with more whatever outside speaking whatever in this Wonder Woman Amazonian whatever. He did not say such. He stopped, but I can very well see and hear what was in the... It was not Italian, I knew that. Anyhow, so this knocking over of walnuts. Now there is another important piece. My son Daniele. I spoke yesterday of some of the horticulture where they, before I got here, and certainly I witnessed while I was here, this industrious new look that they have where they, I don't know if they're aware of what they're doing, but they're introducing plant species from outside orchards into, and then it changes the allergen, the plumare, the bloom is causing doom. It's like this big green, it's almost like a chartreuse color, and it floats through the air, and then the breathing particulate burns the lungs. It makes it very hard to breathe. All of these things could have been avoidable, but they're supposed to be regulated by the public health system, and I'm not quite sure why it was not being taken care of prior to its really dangerous breathing chemistry that it now is at. Almost like somebody is purposely changing little things to make it appear like it's not a kill shelter. Almost like if they say like the worst tragedy in the world was the Holocaust in New England, where they did horrible, horrible things to the Jews. That is as much history as they've ever spoken of, but in a very epiquine, like a very like melodic, like surface level. They don't get into details, and I don't seek out the details of the horror and the pain and whatnot. But now it seems like they make you think like you're safe and okay, but there's other dangers between the pollutants that the cars are letting off. I mean, like at first the gas that they put in their tanks had lead in it. And then at some point they went to unleaded. I mean, was this not and Lewis says it was fossil fuels when I ask. So now, is this not, I mean, these are known facts. And then I'm watching spelling bees, and they're not even familiar to New England. They're not familiar to English. They're not familiar to German, or my version of German. They're not my version of Turkey. I mean, I don't know where these, but they have this capability in memory. Their bodies with this environment are able to hold on to spelling of large, ridiculous words that aren't even used in the English language in everyday vocabulary or vernacular. And they have these challenges and contests to themselves. But for some reason, their level of intellect and their like cache and their ability to memorize things and maintain that memory in precision throughout several cycles of going to bed, waking up, going to bed, waking up. They're able to carry that forward. There's other genetics in eugenics that are having distinct problems in this area, even holding thought and carrying memory, while others are thriving at engineering and all sorts of things from non New England genetics that have somehow infiltrated this New England, and I don't know how. So that's a problem. And they keep showing just how smart they are in the show-off contest, just how smart they are, just how capable they are. And I'm like, right, no, it just goes to prove how somehow the genetic capability of the cerebellum, of the Agy Esz, the cerveau, the Guyun, the whatever that I am using within this particular matrix or between this realm of reality has been plagued with some other burden. I call it beast of burden, but it's some other burden that I was not straddled, I was saddled with. And I don't know when and I don't know how, but I can see who is able to thrive and perform in this area much better than myself. And it shouldn't be. When it's a much more insidious and hard to explain derivative faction that's interactive with the human biome or biodome. And then there's a piece on Bill Maher from HBO. He mentions this Le Louvre in France. First he says it's Italian, then he made a mistake, about the cake in the face. And then the NRA came out with a comment, NRA, I would assume, being the publicist for what's on the balcony, saying, well, not everybody has cake. Right, yeah, got that. Okay, so I know that there's this people and then there's the balcony, and there's some argument at business office that goes on. And I know I belong to somebody on a balcony, but a different balcony from the balcony that oversees this New England whatever. So in Ad Astra per Aspera, I don't know how to get to the balcony provider that I actually was destined for before some other balcony did some whatever they did in oversight and allowed me to be hurt and harmed this horribly, along with several others. But I would be the only one that is reporting at this point, at this level. Oh, and on that Bill Maher piece, he actually has on this guy who was this U.S. Attorney General. Oh, I think his name's Eric Holder. I know nothing about him, but he wrote a book about like continuing the march. I can only imagine it's the dream march that they all had in front of the Savoir, to show what they were up to. And where's New England on this? Was shutting this down. And so he says that there's some acts and some other things that were going on, but he talks about the polling places being shut down. And then he says that there was some legislation that they weren't allowed to do that, but it was to keep the Africans out. And I'm like, this is where it gets really confusing. It's like, are they the South German Africans for white? GRIS, CHAFFEE? Or is this the British side? Or is the two balconies between Germany and British fighting and nobody cares about the people getting hurt? I mean, it gets, between millionaire and the billionaire, it gets a little confusing as to who's wrecking whose trophy wife. I'll start with the gravestone, my grandfather's honor, and the people that actually, I mean, again, I do the INVAIN work for the Lumen, the illuminated, behind the scenes type things at Universal, Multiverse, and Metaverse. The word pattern, I know that there were bodies attached to these at one point, but I didn't know them, and I have callous work to do in order to inform at compulsory exchange and expel other things at balcony level. So unexplained ghost towns don't just arise. Although there was two sets. There was the Greek Turkey, and there was also the German and the British. So this is the CBS this morning. It was numbered, well, I have it at 56.25 for Ad Astra per Aspera. Rough roads lead to the stars. This is how they educated me on that.
Quest, a Latin motto carved in stone. Ad astra per aspera. A rough road leads to the stars. A message of perseverance that helps carry man to the moon.
And last night, d'accord. Last night, I was looking for something with the U. Y-O-U. And in Germano, tedesco, as per Italiano, the man is German. It is the man. It's the, they had another word. Du is you, but then they have man. D-U, M-A-N, what was the last one? In, je ne sais pas, non so. It doesn't carry forward for me at this point. It is so hard to hold the memory imprint of the ingrained, of the things that I need to know and who they belong to. It's like categories at this point. And I can thread them through the needle, but it takes so much effort and so much time. It is so laborious in trabajo.
For CBS Saturday Morning, Chris Van Cleve, Cape Canaveral, Florida.
Well,
Originally on my time sheet, I had 59.03 was this Manhattan X-ray view, but now it's showing it at 57.41, so I don't know how the legend or the scale got changed.
Good morning. It is 7:57 on this Saturday,
that
June
right
4th.
there.
I'm Cindy Hsu. Anti-gun violence rallies continue.
It almost, it's like the shift of the frame, like somebody with a shutter, but it's like an X-ray photo of Manhattan is what it feels like through the eyes of when I sit here and I watch it. I've caught it before, but it's on again this morning. Now this is on the Walnuts. The other thing on the Walnuts is, I don't know what year it was. I think it might have been around 2012, 2013. My son Daniel ate a walnut and all of a sudden got a tree allergy out of nowhere. I mean, he had, not that I served him walnuts, but no tree nut allergy ever presented itself. But his eye was so swollen. It looked like he had gotten, I mean, it started off little, but I drove him myself to the hospital. I sat with him myself. It was something that he and I went through together to get like an EpiPen injection. But to watch his eye just swell up and start to close, but to keep speaking to him, and because he's not a very talkative kid, to make sure he didn't slip while I'm driving in traffic, no less. I'm like, I don't care what you say, start describing something. I just want to keep hearing your words and that your airways are clear while I'm driving to get to the hospital. because it was that frightening in how quickly it was swelling up. Did take a photo of it, and it was on Facebook. But again, that goes back to these genetically engineered or modified chemistry inside of some of the foods and some of the plant seeds that are going in. Again, I don't know which one's which, but I have heard that other children are suffering from these things called food allergens. And one of my children also suffered from this. He's the only one out of all four, and it came out of nowhere. It was unexpected, and then all of a sudden now it becomes a thing.
California is known worldwide for its walnuts, producing 720,000 tons last year alone. But as Elizabeth Kling from our Sacramento station KOVR reports, some growers are giving up on the classic California crop.
Branch by branch, acre by acre. Walnut trees in place for more than a decade.
What I don't understand is this some kind of backwards transmission of admission of guilt? Because why would you give up on your people not being smart or not being able to hold their memory or hold their thought? They say they're knocking down 1,000 trees. I found out the other day through this Jubilee thing that the monarch in England has been 1,000 years in its whatever. I don't know how old the other monarchs are. I think there's a monarch around 5,000. But the question is, with this 1,000-year-old monarch, and this ability for this memory and the people being healthy, again, this knocking down of this orchard, they're putting in tomatoes. I mean, there's so many levels of it. There's food allergens involved, but then there's the alternate where they've been knocking down the trees in the garden and orchard of New England, but in a genetic way of taking out parents and grandparents and things. And now the generation, like my generation, is just so lost, and they don't even have an elder to look up to, because there's been so much of like removing of these family trees in the orchard of like solid anchors that knew things that they needed.
Decade at Bullseye Farms are now destroyed.
We farm a little over 1,000 acres of walnuts, and we're removing about 500.
Orchard manager Nick Edsel says the decision wasn't easy. It took 7 years just to get these trees big enough to produce a crop.
The walnuts on these trees are just starting to form, but they won't be here long enough to mature. These are next in line to be knocked over and dried and then sent on to the wood chipper.
They also mention it takes 7 years for the trees from germination to maturation to produce walnuts. And I know in some alternate universe where there's a god, Thor, who might be spelled Thor or Tar with a little thing on the moon over the top of it, in Qatar, in Tor. Somebody may have fought for someone's walnut in some argument in quiet society, but high society, but quiet society. And then with this Facebook and there being now like a wall and one looking like a nut, I mean, it's duarky.
In the past, the biggest problem was water. It's become probably our third or fourth worry at the moment.
Bill Carrier with the California Walnut Commission says despite
And being ungarish in la recchio, or the ocularis, for the eye, for something more than what this wake up is every day in this really painful situation.
despite high demand for walnuts worldwide, right now California can't deliver.
Our number one problem is the shipping issue, definitely.
Walnuts have a short shelf life compared to many commodities, so it's a race against the clock to get them loaded onto cargo ships and sent to consumers overseas.
So a typical route for a ship is to come over from China, to Long Beach, LA, load something there and unload all their cargo of iPhones and whatever else they're bringing, and then pick up some things in Long Beach, and then head up to Oakland.
But right now, many ships are skipping the port of Oakland altogether and heading back to China empty. So why is that? Prices to bring products from China to the U.S. are soaring, up to $20,000 a container for a trip that takes about a week. But a trip to take walnuts from California to Europe may only pay a fraction of that and require a month or more of travel.
If I were to ship it,
So that's cost savings. I guess it depends if you're on the ground or if you're in the balcony.
I get the economics of it.
This month, both California senators joined ag groups across the state in calling for a summit to address the shipping crisis, saying they are, quote, deeply concerned that U.S. agricultural producers are unable to secure containers to export their products. In the meantime, Edsel says prices for walnuts have plummeted, and Bullseye Farms can't afford to wait.
If we thought that the market would recover, we'd leave the walnuts in and try to just minimize inputs for a little bit.
But instead, these orchards will soon be replaced with rows of...
It kind of feels like what they're doing with my intellect at the moment and my ability to function not as a cyborg or a simonette or a nymph, but as, like, I mean, a tree fairy, an elf, je ne sais quoi, and comment allez-vous? I'm not sure how they tallied this one.
of tomatoes. For now, a far more reliable...
I just know that in capacity customary, in measurements, not in a metric system, but in custom capacity, it is, I can feel I reduce capacity, but I can feel the structure and how they built it. I can draw it, but it's not for public light. It's private house in privé. And here's Mysteries of the Abandoned. I mean, again, I am born Gen X amongst these X-Men. I don't know, is it British, is it German? I don't even know that I've heard that they existed. I just never learned their history. Nobody has taught it. It hasn't become available. And then it's like, this is what it looks like. There are partially built structures, and you look at them, you're like, okay, who owned, which ones are the German, who label them? Like, which one's German, which one was the British? Did they all come here? Is there CCP that's in here at 79th degree? Is there Norwegian? Is it Stalin? Is it Lenin? Is it Hitler? Which one built which? Because they all look like they're crumbling, and I'm in a more dangerous situation in America. For people that have balconies and toes, or tu ma tu. T-O-M-A, and then a T-O. That looks like two balconies to me, with some kind of shared communication method in the middle, in Method Man.
We know about the abuses that the Greeks carried out on the Turks. We're talking murders, we're talking destroying homes. Now we have reports about the Turks carrying out revenge attacks, burning Greek property.
Again, I've already been pronounced as Hela, which is Helen in Greek. Hela in Ragnar, in the epic, the saga, the love story, the Leif Erikson, Eric the Red. And then there's Helen of Troy and Sparta and of the fighting there. I mean, I've already been pronounced by a human who sought me out to say such things. I have other humans who have continued this name-calling, whether it be a call name, a nickname, je ne sais pas, non so. I don't know.
He's killing Greeks.
By 1922, hundreds of thousands of Turks and Greeks had been killed. both sides agreed upon a so-called compulsory exchange of populations. And even communities that had remained on good terms were forced to leave.
So now there was some kind of expel. They call it compulsory exchange of a population between Turkey and Greco, or Greek. Greek and Turkey is what the news yesterday wanted it to be referred to as, in Turkey.
So this is one of the example of Greek houses in Kayaköy. This is actually their kitchen. When they learned they had to leave to Greece, they chatted with their neighbors, Turks, Muslims, and they told them just look after their homes because they expected to come back, but they never come back.
Now, I see in the local area, there is a woman, maybe about Linda's age, maybe younger, around. She always wore a scarf like my nono would say mama, meaning nona. Nona always had a handkerchief, a silk scarf over her. She had scarlet, crimson, ginger, a rosa hair, beautiful color. And she always wore the silk scarf over it when they went out on daily whatever. This woman wore the same. I recognized her right away. She has trouble walking as well in this area. And then one day, all of us, and I've been wearing this baseball cap. I spoke to her, my son and I, one day. She speaks, I mean, if she speaks English, she did not speak it to me. She spoke something completely different. But both my son and I said, we walked away from the conversation. We knew what she meant, even though it was not technically English. So, and then she wound up wearing a baseball cap. And I've seen her the last few times. Dad did not point it out. I don't know what the changeover means, but I find it significant. And a sign of respect for the two of us in this situation. And so that's significant.
500,000 ethnic Turks who are living within Greek territory are simply deprived of their property. They are shipped out to Turkey. About 1.5 million ethnic Greeks who had lived, in some cases in majority Greek villages, are expelled.
For me, they use the ghost town as a non-invasive way for the people that keep feeling like we're abused and never know what's going on, and then we have to praise our abusers between like the have-nothings, the millionaires and the billionaires. And then there's the balcony theater reps that nobody really knows, but they know, and they don't like to be disrespected in their own whatever. So the ghost town's like a really good theoretical of like, okay, this was Greek at one point. This was called Turkey at one point. There were people that lived there. Might have looked like you guys, and this is, they did some, and then it's a easier, non-explosive way. It's like piecemeal and peacekeeping. It's kind of sort of.
You've got this once beautiful town with these communities thriving side by side.
But only if they tell a story right. Otherwise, it's just balcony business office. And then it's really more dangerous for what doesn't know what balcony is doing whatever in whatever. Especially if you're so far away, you're not proximo, you're more distal. All right, on Bill Maher, it's S20E17.
Falling and not run in. Like,
Yes.
I'd have liked to have seen if
What happened? Now here, Bill Maher, on that episode at 06.23, mentions something about a nut. Also the cake, and the Louvre, Le Louvre, and the Mona Lisa.
But once again, Biden said we got to get rid of the semi-automatic rifles. I say we should. Yes, I think that would help a little. And he said he said from now on, if you get caught with the wrong kind of gun killing people, you are in big trouble. In a somewhat related story, did you see a nut in Italy or Paris attacked the Mona Lisa with cake? Cake. And the NRA put out a statement. They said, if only the other paintings had cake of their own.
Now, this is for the mental disease of the SARS, SARS, with the chasm they've created with my whatever happened in America during this time frame in this New England with somebody with a balcony seat. And I don't know where the other balcony is that was expecting me. But for some reason there was not this tomato exchange or tomato in The Man. There was some abandonment, mysteries of the abandonment and the neglect, which are very explainable. I'm just not quite sure why the balcony I was destined for was withheld from a quick transport. Back when, before abandonment and mysteries of the abandonment enshrouded some new problem.
We got a great show. We have Michael Schellenberger and Douglas Murray. But first up, he is the former U.S. Attorney General who recently co-authored the book Our Unfinished March, The Violent Past and Imperiled Future of the Vote, A History of Crisis, A Plan. Eric Holder. There he is. Sir.
I don't know how much space I have on the phone, but he goes into here about them. There were acts put in place to make sure African Americans, and he is normally what they present as an African American in color, were able to vote, but they weren't. So if I'm going on South Africa of Germany and British territories of ghost towns, and there being someone there that looked like me at one point on the balcony, in this New England that I'm in America, North America, they have closed polling. I don't even know what a poll is, honestly. Is it a survey? Like, when do they get scheduled? When are you supposed to show up? I mean, I went through New York's entire literacy of education system, and they never even spoke of polling the children or involving them in some voting system. I mean, the polling stations were closed completely by 1978, and when I entered school, I mean, they're not inviting us on special days, to take part in special events, to give special words. There's been none of that. It's been like an abandoned project, which is how I don't understand how they say that they have this democracy or republic. I mean, who are they listening to if they've taken all of my rights away? And then somewhere where there's white privilege, which I don't know if is that millionaire, is that billionaire, or is that on the balcony, are they aware that they completely railroaded and like disregarded their own laws to get to like U.S. Attorney General level by precluding me and closing me out of the ability to even know what a poll is or survey or consensus or any of these things that I might need to be participating in, but I don't even know that they exist or where to go or who's in charge, because the people that keep claiming title aren't informing my person, especially when there was a designated room I was held in every day for 13 years where representatives came in and could have presented what needed to be done for tasks and instructions to keep pace with legalities of issues. They still did not present it, nor did they allow us to participate.
See you again. You look hale. You look
Not in the function for which they claim that they're using.
well. You look rested.
Yeah. I'm pretty good. Pretty good.
Okay.
Nation's not doing too well, but I'm doing okay.
I know. Well, no, it's not. We got a lot of problems. I want to talk about your book. It's about democracy and voting, which I understand are connected.
Yeah. Well, we try to connect them,
Yeah,
you know?
there's an issue there. So let's, for some of the maybe younger people who don't remember, let's go over the Voting Rights Act for those who are fuzzy on the facts. Voting Rights Act passed in 1965.
Yep.
What was in the vote? What did it do?
It gave the Justice Department the ability to stop local jurisdictions who were so-called covered from doing a variety of things that had been done in the past, moving polling places, closing polling places, changing election dates, all the kinds of things that were designed to keep African Americans away from the polls.
Mostly in the South.
It's actually things designed to keep white, who should be privileged or privileged to that level of information, from participation. Because I see they also talk about water bottles in a line. They had so many people, it was like 40 minutes for them to do some kind of vote. I never even heard about it. I wasn't made aware of it. And the white people's line was only like 5 minutes. That's because there's a lot less of my type that even knows that this exists or where to go to participate. But yet the people who kept it from us and did some really nasty non-sportsmanship-like actions, which led to us being kept in the dark. This is how things go unexplained, and then people argue over it. No, it's a fact. I don't know. I didn't even know what I didn't know. I didn't know how to search for the things I didn't know about. And when I look now that they're saying something, I'm like, right, polls. Where do you go for these polls? Or do these polls even exist any longer? Or was that back in some movement that they had before I even arrived? And again, there's nobody to look up to, and there's nobody informed in this part of New England.
South, right?
Or if they are informed, they look like this.
Oh, I'm sure.
And not telling me the
but
truth.
Mostly the South. Okay, so then in 2013,
Right.
the Supreme Court gutted that law.
Yep.
And until then, it had passed, it had been up for re-upped, right, every year. The Senate voted, I think, only 2 years before that, 98-0.
Right.
That we wanted it again.
It was reauthorized 3 times, and every time by a Republican president.
Okay, so what happened when in 2013, when it got gutted?
The Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Roberts, who wrote the decision, said America has changed, and said there was no longer a need for the provisions that they gutted in the Voting Rights Act, in spite of the fact that Congress had conducted hearings, hundreds of pages of testimony, hundreds of documents, and almost immediately after the act was gutted, states put into place a whole variety of things. 1,700 polling places closed since 2013. Closure of polling places, the requirement for photo IDs to prevent in-person voter fraud. When the Brennan Center says you're more like...
I've never even heard of this Brennan Center. That's how illiterate, even though I went to school, that's how poor the professionalism and the teaching was in the section that I was integrated into. The other thing is that in the poor education, it was presented to me that people that looked like this were African. that gets really confusing in this modern era. I don't know if it was they were changing from allowing refugees from Europe to come over, and now all of a sudden they're accepting some at my balcony level in New England, whites from Africa to come over. That's never been clearly distinguished. They always make it assume and sound like they're high melanin for histology and pathology. High melanin, which causes an extra process of bleach in order to get a tissue sample that can be stained in a way uncertain, whatever. Which I know was a bone of contention back in the day. It just is what it is. It's just an extra whatever that makes it different.
Hit by lightning than to actually cast an in-person fraudulent ballot. A whole bunch of unnecessary things to keep.
We're not even talking about fraud. I don't even know where the places are, or the days, or the calendars, or what the words that they're organized under. I don't even know what that is. So how do I even know to seek it out, or to search for it, or even show up? But that's this quiet expel that's been going on, but it starts very young. I mean, I also heard the other day that they killed all the parents in Romania and made all these like next gens that have no parents to lean on to, who are going to be like some kind of lost generation with no history. I mean, it's essentially what they've done, because they took all of my teachers away.
African Americans, young people, Hispanics, people perceived as Democrats away from the polls have been put in place since that the Shelby County decision.
But
I don't even know what a Shelby is. I think it's a Cobra. I think it's a car. I think it's really fast. And I think it's a very rare car. That's all I've ever heard in New York. But as far as Shelby is, with whatever narrative they're going off of, we're not even, I mean, again, in the We the People, I'm supposed to be on a balcony somewhere having a conversation